Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. We just went to the farmer's market today and they had cranberries for the first time this season. I was super excited because I've been dying to have more cranberry honey. Cranberry honey is probably my favorite infused honey that I make. I make a lot of infused honeys and really enjoy a lot of them. But cranberry is just especially delicious, and especially this time of year, it's just fantastically full of vitamin C and all kinds of nutrition and immune boosting goodies, as well as being amazing for stuff like bladder infections and any kind of issues like that. After the honey is infused with the cranberries, I strain it out, and then all of the cranberries are then candied, and you can just pop them in your mouth and eat them like candy because the juice has come out and the honey has gone in. That's one of the amazing things about sugar and the sugar in honey is it is a fantastic extractor, and the juice comes out and is replaced in the cranberry with the sugar from the honey. And then you can just eat. There's absolutely no waste with this. And cranberries are one of those things. I'm going to go ahead and start pouring honey over this as I talk. But cranberries are one of those things that are a little bit hard to get into the diet fresh because they're just really tart. They take a lot of sugar to sweeten up if you're putting them in a juice or really, like a cranberry jelly or something like that. It takes a lot of sweetness to make up for how tart they are. But I love using raw local honey in all kinds of stuff, and I almost never use honey that isn't infused. We go through gallons and gallons and gallons of honey as a family every year, but we use very, very little honey that hasn't been infused with something, simply because it adds so much nutrition, more nutrition, to your diet to infuse it first. So just to go back for a second, if you're infusing honey into cranberries, I fill my jar about 3/4 full. As you can see, a little bit more full is fine. And then the rest with honey, and then it will take a little bit for this to settle down over the top of the cranberries, and then we'll add more, and we'll just keep doing this until our jar is all topped off with honey. And then it will need to be rotated daily to make sure all of the cranberries stay good and coated. And this will infuse for about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on how warm it is, etc. And then the cranberries get strained out. And after I strain the cranberries out, you can store them just as is, as honey-infused cranberries, in the refrigerator for quite a long time. They last really well. But I usually poke them in the dehydrator and just dry out the last little bit of moisture. And then they're very shelf stable. And even little kids will just munch them down. I have recommended them and given them to many children who had, bladder infection issues or just immune issues going on that really struggle with taking supplements or getting syrups down, or are really picky eaters, but they just thought these were delicious, dried candied cranberries, and they just ate them like candy, which is amazing for the immune system. Alrighty. I'm just going to keep adding to this, and I don't want the video to get super, super long. I just wanted to show you guys this because 'tis the season now. From now until Christmas time, we'll have a lot more access in general, in the United States anyways, to cranberries. And this is a fantastic way to get a kind of hard to eat fruit that is extremely, extremely good for you into your diet. And the honey turns a beautiful, beautiful red. I'm sure once this batch is infused, I'll post a picture later on the page here. But it turns into this just cranberry red honey, and it is so sweet and so good. It's almost like, you would think the tartness of the cranberry would make the honey less sweet, but it almost accents the sweetness. It's just really crazy, and it's really delicious. I have never had anyone try my cranberry infused honey that didn't just love it. It really is good. So if you have access to some good cranberries, grab a few, slice them up. Like I said, you do have to slice them. You can't throw them in whole because the skin just prevents them from drying out for a really long time, and that also prevents the honey from permeating them as well. So they'll just ferment. They'll slowly shrivel and then ferment. If you leave this honey for too long in this state, it will ferment also, which is another delicious option. You can also make fermented cranberry honey, which adds a whole nother layer of pro and prebiotics to your diet. And that can be fantastic too. But in general, I like cranberry just as infused, not as fermented. And so you just kind of have to experiment, because it really does depend on the time of year and how warm it is. You know, here in Idaho, it's in the 40s right now, whereas, you know, if you were down south, it might be in the 80s or 90s still, because it's just the 1st of October. And if it's really warm, the extra moisture that the honey is absorbing from the cranberries will cause the honey to ferment quite quickly. And you can tell because the honey will get really thin, and it just gets thin as the moisture goes into. But if honey gets above about, I think it's 22% moisture content, it starts to ferment. As long as the sugar content to moisture ratio is lower than that, you're good and it is shelf stable. So what I end up doing after I infuse my honeys, if I infuse really large amounts, you know, several gallons at a time, like I do with cranberry or lilac, for example, I put the honey back into a dehydrator just on the air setting, and it evaporates off the excess moisture. I have a refractometer, which is just a little device that you can put honey on that will read the moisture content of it, because I infuse way too much honey to keep it all in my fridge. But if you don't get the moisture content back down below about 22%, I like to have it about 20%, then you will need to keep this honey in the refrigerator after you've infused it, just to keep it from fermenting. Again, you can leave it and let it ferment, and that can be delicious and wonderful as well. Don't get me wrong, but if you would like it to stay unfermented, you will have to store it in the fridge. So keep that in mind. Add a bit more here. And it's amazing how fast the water starts coming out of the cranberries and how thin the honey will get so fast. And I use cranberry honey as pretty much as a substitute anytime I would use honey. In recipes, be they sweet or savory, I love cranberry honey. It goes really, really well with most flavors, even though it sounds odd if you make some and taste it, you'll understand it really isn't a strong cranberry flavor. It's this just delicious, pleasant, sweet, mellow flavor that just blends really, really well with a lot of stuff. And a spoonful of this and some apple cider with some cinnamon, only if you have really good tart apples, otherwise it's too sweet, is absolutely delicious. All right, I'm gonna let these settle some more and add some more honey in a little while. But that's the process for infusing cranberry honey. And like I said, I'll flip this over and let it all coat really well and make sure the air bubbles are out, and just keep adding honey until it's all nice and full, and then just rotate it. I usually do once a day, just flip it on its top or flip it back. The other thing is, depending on your temperature, again, you will need to vent it every day. Sometimes if it's cool weather, you don't need to vent it, except for every few days. But as this all gets moisture in it, it's not actually fermenting yet, but it is creating gases as all of this infuse, and it'll build up pressure under here and pop a lid if you're not careful. So keep that in mind. Some people do it, just put a cloth over it and put a rubber band around it, which works great as well. I just find that it ends up getting sticky, and if you do that, then you can't rotate it either. Some people just take the cloth off and stir it every day, which you can totally do. I find it easier to just gas it off, and I almost always have honey infusing, so it's kind of just a habit for me now to check my shelves and gas off what needs to be gas off. And I'm very familiar with our area and about how often I need to gas off everything too. So I don't do my jars daily, but in warmer climates you will need to do them daily. And with different fruits and different infusions or different proportions, you will need to gas off the jars every day. So keep that in mind. All right, I think that's it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And until next time, I'll talk at you later.